Good morning friends, welcome back to Parnika tutorials. In this video, I want to discuss about structures in detail. So I request everyone to watch the complete video for better understanding. Before discussing about structures in detail, let me discuss what is the purpose or need of a structure. In our earlier sessions, we have discussed about a variable. What is the purpose of a variable? To store a constant. If it is an integer variable, we can store an integer constant. If it is a character variable, we can store a character constant at a time. But what is the limitation of a variable? We can store only one constant at a time. Let me discuss with an example. Let's take that I am declaring a variable called a whose data type is int and I am initializing with a value 10. Then in memory, the variable a will be created in some address location and value 10 will be assigned. Let's take that I am writing a statement as a is equal to a plus 2. Now 10 plus 2 will be 12 and that value will be assigned. So here that value of 10 will be replaced and modified and updated to 12. Is it clear? Are you able to understand? Now previously the integer constant which is 10 has been stored. Now it is updated and it will stored at 12. So at an instant we can store only one constant using a variable. To overcome that limitation, we have discussed about arrays. Arrays is a collection of homogeneous elements. If it is a integer array, we can store a collection of integer constants. If it is a character array, we can store a collection of character constants. But what is the limitation with the array? The homogeneous nature only. If it is an integer array, we cannot store a character constant. That does not permit using the arrays. To overcome that problem in an array, we will discuss about structure. A structure is a user-defined data type that is used to combine different data types. If you want to store or group different data types in a single data type, we can do with the help of structure. Now let's take that I want to store the student information such as student roll number, student name and student marks and student percentage and student age. Now look at here. The student roll number will be an integer. Student name will be a character array. Student percentage will be a float data type. And student age is an integer. So we have various primitive data types are there. Am I right? All this information, if you want to store it in a single array, it is not possible. We have to create a collection of arrays. Am I right or wrong? Similarly, if we want to use it as a variable, then we have to create several variables. That is also not possible and tedious task. So that's why we can use with the help of structure. So in this session, I will discuss about how to define a structure, how to declare a variables for a structure, and how to initialize the elements for a structure, and how to access them. All these things I will discuss in detail. So first let me discuss about structure definition. The generalized syntax of structure definition is you will use a keyword called strut, then structure name or tag name, anything you can use, okay, and then you will have the open curly braces, you will have the data type, you will have the variable 1 or let's take that member 1, okay, and you have the data type and you have the member 2. You have the data type and you have the member 3. And then finally you have a closed curly braces and you have end with a semicolon. So this is the generalized syntax of structure definition. Okay, you are using a keyword called strut, structure name. The name of the structure will have to follow the rules of an identifier. What are the rules of an identifier? All those rules will be applied when you are assigning a name to the structure. And you have a data type member 1, data type member 2, data type member 3. These data types can be same or can be different. Okay, so this is the generalized syntax. Let me discuss with a simple example. I want to create a structure called student. So I am writing a keyword called strut and the name of the structure is student, okay, and then I want to store his ID, so int ID, and I want to store the student name, so I am creating a character array of some size 50, and I want to store his age. So I am writing it as int age. I want to store his percentage, so float percentage. Okay, this is the definition of a structure called student. And remember one thing, once we define the structure, the memory will not be allocated for these members. Remember this point, because this is a structure definition. If you are using the structure definition only without declaring any variables of a structure, then the memory will not be allocated. Okay, now if you look at, this is an integer, this is a character array, this is an int, this is a float. We have several data types are there. All these different data types we have combined with the help of a structure data type, which is a user defined data type. I hope you have understood. Now let me discuss how to declare the structure variables of a structure called student. Then the declaration will consist of struct keyword and name of the structure, and then the variable 1 comma variable 2, so on. How many variables you want to create, that you can do. And remember one thing, even you can declare the variables during the structure definition itself. You can write here v1 comma v2 ends with a semicolon. Both are allowed. At the time of definition itself, you are declaring two variables of structure of student, or you can separately declare the variables of a structure called student with 2. Now look at here what will happen. Now when you declare the variables, then only the memory will be allocated. Okay, now you can ask me, sir, how much memory will be allocated for the variable v1 if you are using a 16-bit compiler, if you are using a 32-bit compiler. Now you know that one integer will occupy 2 bytes in a 16-bit compiler. Similarly, a character will occupy 1 byte. And here we are creating a character array of size 50. So it will occupy 50 bytes. And again integer will be 2 bytes, float will be 4 bytes. Now if it is a 16-bit compiler, you will have 54 plus 4, 58 bytes of memory will be occupied for a one variable of v1. If it is a 32-bit compiler, one integer will occupy 4 bytes, character will again occupy 1 byte only, so 50 bytes, 4 bytes, 4 bytes, so which will be 62 bytes of memory will be occupied by a one variable of structure called student. Unless until you declare the variables, memory will not be allocated. I hope you have understood the structure declaration and definition. Okay, now remember one thing, in some textbooks or some people will say that the name of the structure is optional, but here I have written. Now let me discuss the point called optional. When we can say that the tag name or structure name is optional, whenever they are declaring the structure variables inside the structure definition itself. Suppose look at here, when I am defining it, I am declaring two variables. That time the name of the structure is optional. But if you want to declare the variables separately, then name of the structure is compulsory. Is it clear? Are you able to understand? You can declare the variables like this. If you are declaring the variables like this, then the name of the structure is optional. If you want to declare them separately, then the name of the structure is compulsory. I hope you have understood the word called optional and compulsory. Now let me discuss how to access the members of a structure using these variables. Then only we can initialize them and we can access them, everything. Okay, now let's take that I want to access the student ID using the variable v1. Then I can write v1 dot, I can use a dot operator. Okay, then member, so v1 dot id, like that you can access. Similarly, you can access v1 dot age, you can access v1 dot percentage. So here per is the member of a structure and v1 is the variable of a structure, and we are using a dot operator. So using that one, we can access the members of a structure. Is it clear? Are you able to understand? Now let me discuss how to initialize the values of a variables of a structure. Okay, now let's take that. I want to declare the value, so I can write it as v1 is equal to, open the curly braces. Okay, now the id, let's take that I'm writing 1, and the name of a student, let's take that I'm writing Ravi. So Ravi is a string, so that's why I'm enclosing within the double quotation. Age, suppose let's take that age is 15. Percentage, he got 90.8 percentage. So like this I can initialize the elements of a or variables of a structure using the members. Okay, are you able to understand? Now if you want to print the student id 1, then how can you write it? You can write printf id is what? An integer. So you have to use the format specifier %d. Using the dot operator, you can access v1 dot id, then the value 1 will be printed as an output. I hope you have understood. Okay, is it clear? Now let me discuss this one with a simple program, okay, so that you will understand in a better way. Okay, let's take that I am defining the structure. You can define the structure outside the main function or inside the main function also. Now let's take that you are defining the structure. Okay, you have written hash include std.h everything, then strut, you are writing the name of the structure as student, then you are creating the members as int id char name of some 50 and float percentage. Okay, like that you have defined a structure. Okay, now sorry for it, you are using the void main, and then let me declare the variables of structure called student. Okay, so I'm writing strut student, okay, s1 comma s2. So here I am declaring the variables called s1 and s2, then only the memory will be allocated. Okay, is it clear? Now what I will do is that I will ask the user to enter the student details. Enter the student details. Now whatever the values the user has entered, like student id, student name, percentage, okay, now I need to read them. So what I will use a scanf function. Okay, now if you look at id is an integer, so I will write %d, and name is a string, so I will write %s. Float, percentage is a float, so I will use a format specifier %f. Now to access them or to access the address of the members, I need to use with the variable name. So ampersand s1 dot id comma, as it is a string, I no need to mention ampersand, directly I can write variable name dot member name. Okay, s1 dot name comma ampersand s1 dot per. Is it clear? Are you able to understand it or not? I have written like this. Okay, now I want to initialize the values of a structure variable called s2 directly without asking from the user. I am doing it, so I am writing it as 2, which is the id, and the name is, let's take that, Razu. Okay, is it clear? And his percentage is 70.2. like this also I can do. So I can ask the user to enter the details and I can store them, or I can initialize like this also. Now if I want to print those values, print the values of the student too, so how can you do? Printf you can use, okay, the student 2 details are, the student 2 details are \n. Now if you want to print his id, name and his percentage, you can write printf. As the id is an integer, you have to use the format specifier %d. As the name is a string, you can use the %s. As the percentage is a float, so you are using %f. Now in a single line I have to write, but to make you understand I am writing here, okay. So now I need to write s2.id. I need to use the dot operator. This is very important. This s2 is the variable of a structure, and dot operator and the member name, comma s2 dot name, okay, comma s2 dot percentage, okay. So this is the student 2 details. Similarly, if you want the student 1 details, here just you need to write s1 and s1, s1.id, s1.name and s1.percentage only, okay. Then let me close the write the get ch and close the main function. So this is what the C program to ask the user to enter the student details and display it. So here this is the structure definition, structure variables declaration, and how to access them and how to display the values using the printf and scanf functions. I hope you have understood about structure in detail. If you still have any doubts related to the structure, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I will try to clear your doubts as early as possible. Thank you for watching the complete video. Have a nice day.